What's up everyone, it's an Knife Side here, and today I'm going to be doing my full review on the Reeve knives Umnumzaan. And this review has taken me a little bit longer to do than most. I gave it about almost 3 months of just owning this knife, probably around a month of carrying it, and then another month of using it around the house a little bit. But the reason I took a little bit longer to review this knife than I do with a lot of my other knives is just because I feel like it deserves it. You know, it's kind of hard to explain, but with my Sebenza, I took like 6 months to review this thing, and I took me to buy 3 Sebenzas before I actually reviewed it. And the reason behind it is just because I remember when I first got the Sebenza, you know, I liked it, but it wasn't like the most amazing knife in the world to me, and I didn't really know if it was worth it at the time. But then when I actually started using it, I started to like it a whole lot more, and I figured that I needed more time to really appreciate how good of a knife this actually is. But I don't want to talk about the Sebenza too much, and so that's why I basically gave the Umnumzaan more time, just because I know that with the Sebenza, the more I used it, the more I started to like it. So I figured that maybe the Umnumzaan would be a little bit similar, because this is not your average knife. It's a pretty unique knife, which we'll talk about a little bit. But first, let me throw up some size comparisons really quick. And I will just do a large Sebenza because, you know, these are actually pretty much the same size. You know, maybe one is slightly longer than the other, but I'll line up the pivots right there. And then I'll throw up the PM2. I'll do a small Sebenza. And then last, I will do the Benchmade Mini Adamas. So yeah, it's definitely a full-size knife. I believe it's about a 3.6-inch blade. And so yeah, this is probably not your best lightweight summer carry, but it definitely is a full-size capable knife that you can get a full grip on. Let's talk about the anatomy of this knife, basically what it's built up of. And if you are new to Reeve knives, if you never heard of the Umnumzaan before, I would suggest that after you hear me list off the materials and the price, you're probably going to think it's crazy overpriced, but just stick with me for a little bit longer in the video and let me explain it a little bit more. But the basic anatomy on this is that it's got an S35vn drop point hollow ground stonewash blade with 6AL4V titanium handles that are bead blasted. It is the frame lock, or the Reeve integral lock. Chris Reeve was the first person to invent the frame lock. If you are new to this, it's got a tip-up right-hand carry pocket clip. It's right-hand only, and it's running on Foster bronze washers, made in Boise, Idaho, in the US of A by Reeve Knives. And it will run you about $450. So yeah, pretty steep price tag on there. But let's get into the looks of this knife, because this knife is one of those knives that I think is just one of the coolest looking knives ever. You know, I'm not really someone who cares that much about how my knives look, because I own a ton of really ugly looking Spydercos. But man, this knife looks good. I mean, just look at this blade. Look at this double harpoon up here mixed with this top swedge. It's got kind of just like a belt satin finish on that swedge mixed with that polished stonewash. I just really think this is a good looking knife. Also, that milling in the titanium just looks really good, and the darker bead blast on the titanium finish mixed with the lighter stonewash on the blade and the lighter finish on the hardware. I just think that this is such a good looking knife, and it's just a really cool looking knife too. I know that I might think that this knife looks cool, and someone might think that it's the ugliest thing in the world. But it's a really cool looking knife, and it looks kind of tactical and aggressive, but it looks really cool. I don't really have much more to say about that. For the blade, it's got an S35vn blade, like I already said, and I've talked about S35vn as a steel so much in this channel's lifetime, I guess, just because I own a ton of it. But I will basically just give you a quick rundown on my thoughts on it. So from a user's perspective, from someone who uses their knives, and if I was suggesting this to someone who uses their knives, I would not stress it at all. S35vn is a great user steel, holds a good working edge for a long time, and it's pretty easy to sharpen back up. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But overall, a super fine steel, and I don't think it deserves all the hate that it receives. And also, Reeve, they do a really good job with S35vn. and a lot of times they're known to stand above the rest of other knife companies. A lot of times people will address kind of them as an outlier of being better, how they run their S35vn, but they're actually moving to S45. We've seen some Tonto Umnumzaans drop in S45, and I think I might have saw a few drop points hit retailers, but I'm not completely positive. But overall, S35vn from a user's perspective is a perfectly fine steel that I like. Now, from someone who is a knife nerd, I really enjoy sharpening, and I am kind of into the steels a little bit. I would like to see S35vn sharpen up a little better. A lot of times people will be talking about S35vn and they'll just be like, oh yeah, it's easy to sharpen. And I mean, it's not a hard steel to sharpen, but what I'm addressing when I say sharpen up better is basically a lot of times with S35vn, I feel like after I finish sharpening, it's just not the most crispy edge ever. It's kind of hard to describe, but steels like, M4, S90V, these high carbide steels, after you sharpen them up, especially on diamond stones, if they are treated at a good HRC, basically they'll sharpen up very well, like just come out hair shaven, very sharp. And S35vn can come out like that, but it just doesn't seem to basically come off as sharp as some of my other knives. Now we're talking a difference that no one will really ever notice, but it still is something that I would like to see a little bit. Also, I guess another knife nerd complaint I could have is the fine edge of S35vn goes away pretty quickly. I classify the fine edge as when it stops shaving hair. So yeah, it seems like sometimes I'll just use it a little bit, it'll stop shaving hair, and I usually strop my knives back up when they stop shaving. I know I don't need to, but that's pretty much what I do just because I enjoy sharpening and I enjoy stropping. And so it does seem like I'm stropping back my S35vn knives more than I do, something like even S30V. So overall, just S35vn is a good user steel, but I am looking for a little bit more things just from a knife nerd's perspective, but don't really count that as a negative in my book. Let's talk more about this blade and the thickness behind the edge. So this has the same hollow grind as the Sebenza, the deep hollow grind. If you guys are aware of the Inkosi, it's another knife from Chris Reeve Knives, and it's basically it has a large hollow is basically what they call it, and that is basically, I keep saying basically, it's just a hollow grind that's not as I can't do two things at once. Okay, the large hollow on the Inkosi basically doesn't take as deep of a concave, I guess you could say, and so it isn't as good of a cutter as the Umnumzaan and the Sebenza, and so I do like that more on the Umnumzaan. But some people who want, thicker, a beefier knife, maybe they don't like that as much, which I don't think you're really going to tell that much of a difference. But I just measured 18 thousandths behind the edge on this, so yeah, I really just measure around that 20 thousandths mark on Chris Reeve Knives, and that makes sense because they build knives to last a lifetime, to be applicable in hard use while also be applicable in EDC, and so 20 thousandths is really kind of that average mark. For my purposes in this knife, would I like it to be thinner behind the edge? Yes, I would, but I completely understand, if you look at the other features of this knife, why it is what it is. And I really feel like that, if a company like Benchmade or Cold Steel made a knife like the Umnumzaan, it'd probably be around 30 thousandths behind the edge. And so I'm glad that Chris Reeve Knives, they realize that knives that are thinner cut better, and that's what knives do. The stock thickness on this is a little bit thicker than most of the average knives that you use, and so if you look at my angle, I did sharpen this knife. It is a little bit lower than the one from the factory. I would say that this is probably 16 or 17 degrees per side, and some people might freak out about that and think it's way too thin, but I actually think that dropping your angle is something that a lot of people are really scared of, because everyone's always like, oh yeah, sharpen your knife at 20 or 22 degrees. But really, with these modern steels and these very well rock-weld blades like this S35vn, these steels can take it, and so I would suggest trying it out. And I've really liked the cutting performance since I have dropped the angle. I'd highly suggest dropping the angle. Just be cautious of one thing that I'm going to point out, and that's the sharpening choil here. So they didn't do the best job on this from the factory, and that's a little bit of a bummer. If you don't know what I'm talking about, as you can see, this kind of gradual thickening up over here, that is the plunge grind right there. And so basically, I keep saying basically, still don't know why I'm doing that, but This sharpening choil, it would need to be extended out to maybe like right where my fingernail is, right there, to not run into any of the issues of a smile. Basically, if I drop this angle back more, I will get a smile on there, and that will be kind of frustrating, where it looks like this edge kind of goes all the way back there. And the reason why that's shocking is because on the Sabenza, this is one of the best sharpening choils that I've ever had. I mean, look how thin that is. You're not going to run into any issues for a really long time. So I just don't know why it is the case on this one. It's not, I guess that is a nitpick, but I would like to see them do a little bit better. And I can fix that myself, but you know, I don't really want to do that. So I wish the choil was a little bit better on this knife. Anything else to say about this blade? I think that the drop point, they come in the drop point and the Tonto blade shapes. They're both really good. I think the Tonto only has one harpoon on here, which isn't as cool looking, but that would be a very, very heavy duty blade if you are really planning on hard using your knives. I like a drop point blade. I just find it better for EDC tasks, and honestly, I haven't given a Tonto a shot. I really should. It just seems like when there's a drop point option, I usually side with that. And usually, if there is a Tonto version, there is a drop point version. So I guess that's my thought process behind it. But this blade shape, it's simple, it's effective. I really enjoyed it. And so yeah, that's that. Let's talk about the fit and finish, the construction, and the lockup of this knife. And one thing that I want to address that just always blows me away with these Chris Reeve knives is their grinds on the swedge right here. So this top swedge, it kind of starts with this at the apex, I guess you could call that, between the two harpoons here, and it's completely symmetrical on both sides. It looks really good. And one thing that they always do that impresses me, sorry, let me get that to focus, is they take it all the way to the tip. They take that swedge all the way up there, and that's something that a lot of companies don't do very much. Look at this mini Adamas here. As you can see, it stops right about there, just because honestly, I don't really know why they don't bring it all the way up to the tip, but as you can see, it's not thinned out up top there, and I just think that it's a lot harder to take this wedge all the way up to the tip. It takes more attention to detail, it takes more preciseness, and so I think that that is very impressive. And a lot of times, even with custom knives, you don't get grinds this symmetrical. Also on the main primary grind, these I have not had any issues with an off-center grind, so I think that's something to address. Now, take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of custom makers are hand grinding their blades, which is definitely very hard, and I mean they use a machine or a jig at the Chris Reeve Knives factory in order to get these grinds. But I do think it's impressive how precise they are and how good they look, and yeah, I'm a really big fan of these. So one interesting thing about the construction is just the lack of hardware. I just think it's cool that there's one pivot and one body screw, and usually on knives you'll see, I don't know, your standard Benchmade Adamas, you got a pivot, stop pin screw, two body screws, and all the clip screws. Yeah, I guess there is a clip screw on this, but I just think it's cool because these thumb studs act as a stop pin in the closed position. Basically, they rest up against the titanium from keeping the blade from falling more down this way, and also they act as a stop pin in the open position, so it keeps the blade from going this way. And I just like that because, as you can see here, there is no stop pin at all, and it's just cool to have that really open design in the back. And a lot of companies nowadays, I feel like the more innovations that come out in the knife world, the more complexity there is to their knives, and I just think it's cool to appreciate a knife that is so simple but also so well built. I just think that is really cool. This hardware is very good quality, and I mean, this pivot right here, this is a big beefy pivot. If you have an Umnumzaan and you've never taken it apart, I'd suggest to take it apart and just look at how fat this pivot is. I mean, it is really, really cool. I believe it's a 1/8 Wehod Allen key that they give you. I'm not positive on that, but they do supply the tool for the pivot and the body screw, and the body screw is the same as the pocket clip screw. So I think that that's really cool. And they also give you 2 of the pivot screw tools because this is a free spinning pivot. Now, I don't really wish that it was a free spinning pivot. I kind of like how it is, like a sleeved pivot, like how it is on the Sabenza. Basically, you got a female end and a male end, and the male end screws in there with the pivot bushing system. This one does not use the pivot bushing system. which I wish it did, just because I feel like the pivot bushing, they have such good tolerances over at the Chris Reeve Knives factory that they can get a pivot bushing to where it's always really well done on a lot of different knives. I don't want to get into that much because this is a video about the Umnumzaan, but how this worked with this assembly, I took it apart, put it back together, tightened the pivot until the blade was centered and the action was good. There was no blade play, and yeah, I was completely fine with that. They do include some Loctite in the package because free spinning pivots have more of a tendency to back out, but I took this apart as soon as I got it, took that lanyard off, and I haven't had any issues with it backing out since. There is some Loctite in the screw right there. I don't know if that's going to show up on camera, but I could probably just get that out with a toothpick and it's not really bothering me. One note about the stop pin, someone commented on my first impressions showing me this thing and I really didn't know about it, so I don't know who commented that, but I guess if you're watching this video, you know who you are, so I appreciate that. Basically what they have is it's almost like another stop pin that goes in here and it's just a screw on the other side, and so it just looks like two body screws like this, and so you don't have a hole in the knife. I never ended up doing it. You can buy it off their website for I think about 10 bucks. I never ended up doing it just because a hole in the knife handle doesn't bother me all that much, just because majority of all my other knives have it. But I do think that is a cool option for people. Also, there are Jekyll to Hyde backspacers that people get for these. I've never tried one. I probably should check one out, but I don't really know much about them, so I guess if you are interested in that, just do some of your own research on there. But what else could I talk about with the fit and finish? Oh yeah, I want to talk one question about these external stops. So if you look at this right here, you see a kind of a black mark or a darkened mark where it hits on the right side here, but I don't see that on the left mark. And I think I've seen this before on some other knives, but do you think that the right hand stop pin is only touching, or is it the left and the right? I'm not sure. Maybe it's because when I flick it up, I push with the right, and maybe if I open this left-handed every time, it would be the left side. I don't really know. Maybe I'm just making something up, but yeah, I would be interested if you guys know the answers. Please leave that in the comment section. Here is the glass breaker and the grind on this. I've never actually even looked at this. Looking at it off camera, yep, the grind looks symmetrical on this glass breaker, and a lot of people might expect me to just complain about a glass breaker because a lot of people just see it and they're like, that's stupid, useless, tactical, corny, I don't like anything about it. And now I don't want glass breakers on any of my knives, but if you're going to do a glass breaker, do it like this, because this is really perfect. I mean, in your pocket, this sits down right here. You don't even notice that it's there at all, and when you open it, it just goes right into the handle there, and when it's fully open, it's just sitting in the handle. So you really don't notice this glass breaker at all unless it's in the closed position, and that's when in an emergency situation, if you needed it, it would be there. So my thoughts is I don't need one, but if you're gonna do one, do it like this. So props to them for doing that. Anything else I got to say about this thing? For the fit and finish, yeah, I think I've said everything I gotta say. I guess my overall conclusion for the fit and finish is I think it's cool how such a simple knife in construction can be so capable in use. So now, oh yeah, lockup. Let me address this. So it does use the ceramic detent ball lock interface system, which is basically, you know, most frame locks use a ceramic no, not a ceramic, a steel lock bar insert, which is basically just steel on the end of the titanium frame lock, as you can see on the ZT right here. But what this does, it's basically a ceramic ball inserted into the top of that comes in contact with the tang of the blade, and there's the mark that it makes right there. And it feels very, very good on this Umnumzaan. On my 31, or on the 31s out there, it was a little bit sketchy, and you could kind of feel some up and down movement. But on the Umnumzaan, no issues with that at all, and it's just very, very good quality. I really like the frame lock, very well done. And I mean, Chris Reeve invented the frame lock, and I think it's saying something that he makes some of the, or I guess Tim Reeve now, but they make some of the best frame locks in the market, and they were one of the first ones. You know, usually when someone comes out with an invention, someone just makes an innovation to it and just improves on it. But nope, they're sticking with it, and they are some of the best out there, and I really am a big fan of them. Let's move on to the ergonomics. So the ergos on this, they are good for me, but some people I've seen in the comments of my videos, they aren't the best for. So first thing I want to address is it's just got a straight back here, and I really like that because what that does is that distributes the pressure of the cut to the whole length of your hand. A lot of knives, as you can see, with maybe like this native chief right here, let's say I was gripping it in the saber grip, this kind of top hump here would almost create a pressure spot in my hand, and just with a lot of cutting that could get uncomfortable over time. It's never really a big issue that I have, and if I have a knife like this, I honestly don't even know if I'd address it as a negative, but it definitely is a thing with long-term cutting. So with this, it's very comfortable and also very good for push cuts like that, which I do a lot of cuts like that, and I just really like how it feels in that grip. But one thing that I heard a lot about the ergonomics from the Umnumzaan, one thing that I've seen a lot in the comment section, is that a lot of people get a hot spot on their pointer finger and sometimes get blisters from it. And I just want to say that I don't, and I was wondering what the case is, or like why that was happening. And I kind of got two ideas, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comment section. So one idea, as you can see, this finger groove here, maybe your finger is just too wide for it and is pushing on that little like raised part up there, and that is just creating the hot spot. But I was thinking about that more, and it's just I don't really think that would make a blister. It'd just be kind of uncomfortable. Here's what I think the issue might be. If you look in this area of this finger choil, there is just a lot of stuff going on. You see the chamfering up here, chamfer right there, kind of a weird chamfer. They grow, it's wider in some parts than others. And also, because it's such a big pivot, the bottom of that blade sticks out a little bit through over the handle right there. And so there's just a lot going on, and my thoughts is that if the lockup on this is later, basically that lock bar would be moved over more, creating more of a gap between this part, just the regular titanium handle, and the lock bar right here, creating more of an area for your finger to get in there, for skin to get in there, and for it to get pinched with extra use. Also, if you're doing stuff like this where you're maybe cutting into something and then pulling up a little bit, your left finger would push that lock bar back as your hand's pushing it forward, almost creating that pinch factor and making it a little bit worse. So that's my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. But yeah, that's just really all I could come up with. But overall, one more thing I guess I could have with the ergonomics, if I hold it more up into my hand where my fingertips are resting on this pocket clip, or kind of towards the front of my fingers, it can become a hot spot in some grips. I'm really trying to find it right now, but overall it's not, it's very, very comfortable for me. And so yeah, now that I'm even trying to do it, I really don't feel it. And also this grip you see me do where you put your thumb in this front harpoon is really nice, just because it goes up a little bit, so it's not just like your thumb is freely moving. There is just a little bit of resistance right there, so you can get a whole lot of leverage on a cut when you do it like this. The pinch grip is pretty good on this, and I don't really expect you to do this cut very much, but you definitely can do that. Put your pointer finger in that second harpoon, and that could be very, very useful. That's all I got for ergonomics, so let's move on to the carry of this, and the carry is pretty good. I mean, these titanium handles they are not milled on the inside. They're pretty much just slabs of titanium, so this is not the lightest knife in the world. I don't have an exact weight for you, but you guys can obviously go look that up on pretty much any knife retailer that has an Umnumzaan. And my thoughts on the carry, carries like a Chris Reeve knife. I mean, it works perfect in jeans. That's pretty much what I wear. No, you're not going to be wearing this around in athletic shorts, taking this to the gym with you, but it carries great. I have no issues with that. This pocket clip is my favorite pocket clip ever. I just feel like it's perfect. It's got this double retention point, which secures it in your pocket more and doesn't allow it to move like this. Also, it just secures it a little bit more. You got a good ramp right here, to the point where I can just push this straight down into my pocket, and sometimes I have to hold my pocket and really work with a knife in order to do it. The only complaint that I really see people have is, one, it's not the prettiest thing in the world, so they'll change it out. And I think that, yeah, it doesn't look good, but I mean, it's still a very functional clip, so I don't really care how it looks. And also, this is a pretty high bill here, and so what that can do is kind of, maybe if you get your pocket clip caught on a lot of things, technically this would be a horrible situation, but you get the clip caught on something, it snags, falls out of your pocket, gone forever, bye-bye Umnumzaan. Yeah, that'd be pretty rough, but that's obviously never happened to me because I have this right here, but I did lose my native, so yeah, I guess I shouldn't be talking about losing knives. But overall carry, no complaints with it. Yes, it is on the heavy side, but if you wear jeans, it'll be completely fine. Let's talk about the action here. So this is something that gets kind of controversial, or not really controversial, but a lot of times I'll see people get the Umnumzaan and they'll be like, man, this thing is just horrible. I mean, it's super hard to open. My thumbs are dead. I don't really understand it. And like I said at the start, this is a unique knife and it's just a little bit different than something like your average pocket knife out there. And so the Umnumzaan, what makes it different is the kind of path that you have to take with your thumb to deploy the knife. So most thumb stud knives, you're going to take this thumb stud and move it kind of in that direction, like that. That's just usually how you do it. But with the Umnumzaan, if you move it like that, it's a little bit harder, probably because you are having to go around this big pivot here, which just makes it, if you push it like that, it'd probably get pushed out like this, but it's resisting having to get up over this part here, which is, in the end, there isn't enough power behind the flick to get it deployed. So what you need to do is almost flick it in the path that this titanium takes. Not really a straight up flick, but like barely angled like this, and it flicks out really nicely. And these do break in, smooth out over time. And so, yes, it might be a little bit rough. It might be hard on your fingers at the start, but it will break in. Just be a little bit more patient with it and don't just be rushed, because then you might not like the knife and sell it when you would be selling a really nice knife. But another complaint that people say is this lock bar is harder to push over. Now, they do use heavier lock bar pressure on these knives, just because, I mean, the heavier the lock bar pressure, the more secure the frame lock is. But since this this access to the lock bar is a little bit lower than your average knife, it's probably harder to push down than your average knife. But I feel like it's still not that bad, especially after my thumb has gotten used to it. And one thing that I would suggest you try, maybe if you're got your new Umnumzaan, your fingers are really hurting, is this offers you a wide surface area of I just guess a place where you can put your thumb. And so what I do a lot of times is I just put the pad of my thumb right there, and I can close it just fine like that. And it's a lot more comfortable than just digging the tip of my thumb right there. And I think that it's very easy to do, so I would suggest that. I think that that works fine. So overall, my conclusion on the action is if you're someone who, I mean, you know yourself, I'm not trying to be rude because I know some people just don't have the opportunity to use their knives very much. But if you're someone and you know yourself who plays with their knives more than they use one, or more than they use them, and care more about just the fidget factor than the actual cutting performance and ergonomics, I would stay away from this knife. It's probably not for you, but other than that, I would highly suggest it, which brings us into the last portion, the value. So is this thing worth $450? I think that it really is. I mean, it's made in America with very, very good build quality. It's so simple, but also such a good performing knife. This blade is very, very good. It can be applicable in hard use, but also really effective in everyday carry. This is going to be a strong knife. They will be a great workhorse if you want to use it for that. It's got one of the best frame locks out there, the first frame lock out there, S35vn, which is developed by Reeve. Just a very, very good knife, really nice. And expect a comparison between this and my Sebenza coming in the future. That's a video that I don't really want to make because I love both of these knives and I don't really want to have to choose between them, but I think that it's a video that I need to do since I own both of them. I'm thinking about getting an Inkosi when they come out in S35vn, so I would really like to do a video comparing all three of them, and I'll probably do that when I get my Inkosi, but it might be a while before I can get it. So I guess my conclusions is that this is a unique knife. It's different, and I feel like there's sometimes I'll see people get it and they'll kind of freak out and be like, this is weird, I'm not used to it. And they'll kind of pick apart all the things that they aren't used to and count them as negatives and just say, okay, I don't like this knife. But I think that it's a great workhorse, very comfortable, very well thought out, great build quality on this thing, one of the best frame locks in the game, best pocket clip in my opinion, and just a really, really solid knife, made in America, backed by a small company with a really good warranty. If you guys don't know about this, I've mentioned it before, but if you get these snail trails on here, which they might show up like just kind of faint rub marks on it, yeah, but the snail trails haven't really formed yet, you can actually send it back, and this one was all snail trailed up, and I sent it back, and they will bead blast it for you. I actually bought this one used, so that's why I sent it back, because a lot of times when you get your own snail trails, you will want to keep them, but free of charge. They will re-blast the pocket clip, the handle, and or the titanium, and it looks pretty much like a brand new knife, which I think is really, really cool. And all you have to pay is shipping on the way there on your part, and they charge you, I think, around $17 for shipping on the way back, because they insure it and use UPS or FedEx, one of the two. But so I think I've said everything I need to say. This is a very good knife, and I'm a huge fan of it. It is definitely sticking around in my collection. So yeah, I hope to get some more use on this thing in the future, and I guess I feel like right now I'm content with my Chris Reeve knives. Like I said, I do want the Inkosi, but I'm not really that eager to buy one. But I got a large Sabenza, I got a small Sabenza, and I got an Umnumzaan, so I think I'm set and content for a little while. But maybe I'll be talking about a video in 2 months from now, and I'll own 3 more. You never really know. But that's gonna do it for the video. If you're still sticking with me 30 minutes into this, I really appreciate it, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one.